Experiment time. Today I'm making sourdough bread with different percentages of whole wheat flour, varying from 20 to 60%, and we'll see what difference it makes. In the dough, in the gluten development, and the final loaf. It's exciting stuff. Hi, I'm Sune, and I'm a food geek. Today I'm going to experiment with the proportion of whole wheat flour to bread flour, and we'll see what difference it'll make in a freestanding loaf. When we make a freestanding loaf, a major factor in its success is gluten development. Gluten form a network that will hold the dough together, which is also why we work and monitor the gluten development throughout the process of making the dough. Chemically, gluten develops in a dough when the proteins glutenin and gliadin get hydrated. This is what autolyse helps us with. Also, mechanical mixing, like using a machine, kneading, folding, or slapping the dough will help gluten development. Whole wheat has a lot of proteins, often in the 12 to 13% range, quite similar to bread flour. So why is gluten development not as good when we use whole wheat flour as when we use bread flour? Well, the difference between whole wheat flour and bread flour is that the bread flour has the germ and the bran sifted out of the flour. The extra particles in the whole wheat hinders gluten development because those particles are extra thirsty and can prevent the proteins from becoming fully hydrated. They can also excrete compounds that weaken the gluten and they can create microscopic holes in the cell walls. That's what science has to say about it. And that also explains why creating an open crumb whole wheat bread is a much more complicated affair. If you're new to this channel, I bake a lot of sourdough bread and I make delicious food from all over the world. I want to teach you how to get the most out of every ingredient, and I want to show you how to do that in simple and understandable steps. So join me by subscribing and ringing the bell so you won't miss any future videos. So the bread flour that I'm using today is a strong white flour from a Danish mill called Kornby Mølle. For the whole wheat, I'm milling it myself on my muck mill on the 0 setting. The wheat berries are from the Danish company Orion. The hydration of each loaf is 80%. I will be documenting the dough making in this video so you can watch the dough how it progresses throughout the process. If you want to support the channel, please buy some merch or use the links in the description for tools and ingredients. Full disclosure, those are affiliate links, so I'll be getting a commission if you buy something. Those were the words. This is the experiment. First, I autolyse the flours for each bread. First, the dough with the 20% whole wheat flour. Then the dough with the 40% whole wheat flour. And then the bread with 60% whole wheat flour. I let them autolyse for about an hour, and then I mix in the starter in each dough. First the 20%. Then the 40%. And then the 60%. Then I let them rest under a damp dish towel for about 30 minutes. Then I start the bulk fermentation. I'll do 3 sets of stretch and folds spaced out by 30 minutes. The first set of stretch and folds. All the doughs are looking pretty similar at this point. The second set of stretch and folds. And the third set of stretch and folds. After this step, I'll do a Windowpane test to check the gluten development. After this third set of stretch and fold, you can tell that the 60% is not well enough developed. I put the other two into bulking containers, but I rest the 60% for 30 minutes and do a fourth set of stretch and folds. It's looking much stronger now, so I put that in the bulking container as well. All three doughs are maturing in my proofer set to 30 degrees Celsius, about 86 degrees Fahrenheit. The 60% dough is ready first. The freshly milled whole wheat is really potent. I pre-shape it, then I let it rest for 20 minutes, and then I final shape it. This dough is looking really nice and not very whole grainy. Easy to shape. Then the 40% is ready. This is getting predictable. I pre-shape it. And then I final shape it. This dough looks very nice too. Even at 80% hydration, it's not very sticky and it's easily shaped. Then the 20% has finished its fermentation. This is the control because this is how I usually bake. This is looking fine and dandy. A bench rest and then a final shape. Great looking dough, easy to work with, albeit a bit more sticky than the other two.
Each dough were placed in the fridge after they were shaped, and they stayed there for about 8 hours each. Then I baked them in the order they were put in the fridge. The 60%, the swing, what an oven spring. The 40%, wow, it almost exploded. And the 20%. These three look very similar. I doubt that anyone could tell a difference if they didn't have a sign. Then I let them cool off to room temperature before cutting into them. It's the 20%. A very nice and well-fermented crumb. The 40%. A very nice crumb too. A bit of a shaping issue on the edge there, but nothing major. The 60%. For some reason my video paused here, but you can see the crumb in the sniff and taste test. Let's do that. They all smell great, but the more whole wheat, the more breadiness. Is that a word?
Well, that's a bit surprising. Even though the bran is supposed to be hindering the gluten development, it seemed to work just fine. The crust of each of these breads were comparable. The crumb of the 20% was a bit softer, and the crumb in the other two had a bit more of a rustic feel, but definitely on the soft side. The 40 and the 60% had more nutty notes, and you could really taste the flour. This experiment opens up to the question if it's possible to make a freestanding loaf with up to 100% freshly milled flour. Let me know in the comments if you want to see that experiment. I hope you learned something today. See you next time.